how wonderful to be here in this session with all of you from all over Latin America and the Caribbean. It's amazing to have got you together and very exciting. And thank you very much indeed for being here. And an amazing amount of work has gone in has been contributed by your individual academies of science, selecting you and bringing you here. And so there's been a lot of preparation, and it's lovely that we're here at the realization of the moment. And Emmanuelle Charpentier, thank you very much indeed for being here as well. Emmanuelle, where are you? Tell us where you're speaking from.
I'm in my office in Berlin. And because of the time difference, and because now we are in November, so the light is going down and soon it will be dark.
You always appear with this very, very white background. It's very clean and pure.
Yeah, it's because my office is organized as such that there is a white wall that has a special paint on which I can write and on which I can also project.
Ah, okay.
And this is what I'm facing from my desk. But right now I'm on another table whereby this this wall is behind me instead of being in front of me.
It's nice.
And because I have an office that is a mixture between an office and a meeting room. So it's also set up as a meeting room.
It's lovely that you've taken the childhood concept of scribbling on the walls.
Exactly. Exactly. So it's nice because one can write, and then we can get rid of the writing with a special pen that is used for this wall.
So the topic, as you all know, is United by Science, which covers pretty much everything being a scientist and making science effective for you as an individual and for society as a whole. Let's start somewhere. Let's start with the question of what it takes to be a good scientist. Please just chip in. So if you want to make the first comment or ask the first question, just raise your hand and you can get things going. Andrea.
Hello, my name is Andrea Santamaria. I'm currently an undergraduate student of civil engineer at the Universidad Tecnológica de Panamá in Panama. Well, I have read that you have shared, Emmanuelle, the importance of a place with a good scientific environment where you have the freedom to decide the direction of the research, the support of the community of scientists, where you can develop new knowledge. I can deduce that you have to have skills such as creativity, discipline, identification of challenges and opportunities, reflection on the findings, among others. Starting from that, what would you recommend to mentors, teachers, and young Latin American scientists to promote these capacities or others that are necessary to develop quality scientific communities?
Well, it's an excellent introduction to the topic. And it's also challenging what you ask, actually. I think, first of all, what I realize is that you have less and less people willing to teach and to also take the time to somehow explain the scientific methodology and what it takes to be a scientist. For sure, I would say that the best is the experience. I think one can always integrate or absorb what someone is going to tell you, but the best is actually to experience it yourself. I have actually two students from Latin America in my lab. I mean, one from Colombia, one from Mexico, and I have a postdoc from Chile. So I think it's I can see that what is important is really the step at some point to have an experience abroad or in institutions and environments where one can really appreciate this criteria that you mentioned. I think the experience is the best. Now, for sure, what I believe is that for the teachers and also for the mentors is actually as early as possible in school, at school, and you know, even at the university, to integrate, in addition to the teaching of you know, teaching the facts of science and engineering, really introduce the scientific methodology and provide examples of what it is to be a scientist or what it is to be an engineer, and also offer the possibility to the students to interact with scientists and engineers, and maybe organized very early on visits on sites. Then the students are exposed to science maybe too late, and then they are they are put in a context where a career in science is not shown in a very let's say sparkling manner, in the sense that the reality is that it's quite tough. But this was also in my generation. I was, and maybe you experience the same if you're at the universities, that everyone will explain you that a career in science is extremely difficult, that 0.5% of you will be professors, etc. And this is not specifically encouraging. And I think that with regard to what you said, there is a different role that mentors and teachers should have in having a language that is more positive and that highlights all the possibilities existing out there around science, even if it is not to be a scientist. So many things are happening in scientific communication, in scientific management, in everything that is application of science, new types of institutes being built. So there is really a chance to have teachers and mentors highlighting those aspects, so that you can be very excited in studying science and technologies, because you will see the high potential and value of what you do. A lot of my students and postdocs are the kind of entering my lab, and even while being in my lab, a little bit negativity, saying, yeah, we don't know what we can do, and we don't know what kind of job we will find. And ultimately, they all found a job within actually maybe a shorter time than what they were expecting. So there are lots of opportunities, and this is really important to mention.
Thank you very much indeed, Emmanuelle. Thank you, Andrea, for your question. Okay, we've got a lot of people to get through in our session. Andres Castillo.
Okay. Well, my name is Andres Castillo from Venezuela. I am third-year bioanalysis student. My career in other countries is called like biochemistry, clinical laboratory, from University of Carabobo, Venezuela. I want to follow your answer because I like it a lot. I think personally that being a scientist is a blessing, but in regards of those people who don't have the opportunity to get into the world of science because they have another important responsibilities like attend their families, work full time, and they don't have the chance to get into their passion. What would you say to those people to encourage them to maybe pursue a Nobel Prize and get into the world of science? And what would you say to the organizations or laboratories to give more opportunity to those people? That's my question.
Yeah, you mean the people who have a familiar setting that restrict them to
Yes.
I think this is interesting because I was in a panel discussion this morning where someone actually behind BioNTech, which produced one of the BioNTech Pfizer vaccines, mentioning that for the vaccine to be developed by BioNTech, it took a different approach with regard to the work, in the sense that one needed to go very fast. So they introduced shifts to be able to work fast to develop the vaccine. So they were working 24/7. Doesn't mean that everyone was working 24/7, as a matter of fact. The people were not working specifically more than anyone else. It's just that you had groups of people working at different times. And I thought that it was very interesting because I have a lot of students, maybe some of you are interested in going to science and technology because you want to make the difference. And maybe you want to bring, a little bit a drop in the ocean of bringing something to humanity. And this is not without efforts. So in principle, maybe no one wants to be like me because I worked a lot and I don't have a family. But you can also, succeed. It's not a question of succeeding. I think it's a question of also working as a team. But I think what is very important is actually the success of science is a teamwork. And a teamwork, for example, if I take CRISPR that led to this discovery, it was working with students who had different also schedules. Some were more from the morning, others were more from the afternoon. And I thought that this person from biotech, what mentioned was interesting, because if you take hospitals where people want really to save lives, you don't work in a hospital from 9 to 5, you have shifts. People are working day and night, but the people themselves, they don't work day and night. And I believe that maybe instead of bringing lots of regulations of work, let's say, work regulations in science and technology, which doesn't fit very well. Let's say it's not a question not giving the possibility to go for holidays or work, maybe not 14 hours a day. But I think it's a question of offering flexibility. What I liked in this job very early on is the fact to be able to work, flexible hours. In biology, for example, you have this code of authorships. And the first author is really the person important. The last author is the head of the lab. And I think the people who find themselves in the middle, sometimes they contributed, but their contribution is not highlighted. You have other types of research, I think physics or mathematics, where the authorships are totally different. You have, it's alphabetical order, and then you have the contribution of every individual. So I think as well, all those aspects should maybe evolve.
Thank you, Emmanuelle. And of course, one of the reasons that all these young people have been brought together to talk to you is that IANAS, the overarching body of academies of sciences, wanted to get together this vanguard of science to see how they could build networks between each other. And, and that the supporting network that you're talking about is an extremely important part of science. So, and maybe we'll talk more about that later. Igor Oliveira.
Hi, my name is Igor. I'm from Brazil. I'm a PhD student from in an environmental science and technology program, and I'm very happy to meet you all. And we talk a lot about how science and doing science is gratifying and how we can change a whole generation, but it's not very talk in the college and the academic community about another approach of science that student and research and scientist life is quite intense because it's full of demands, it's expectations and goals to be achieved. And this generates greater stress and affects the researcher's life. A Nature's article in 3 years ago publicated that 39% of graduate students suffer from symptoms of depression, and 41% suffers from symptoms of anxiety, while the general population is like 6%. And these numbers are inevitable reflects on results and on science as a whole. So, Emmanuelle, as a researcher in science, I know that you have probably already gone through these experiences of stress, anxiety, and pressure in research. You know what it's like to be in this place. So, and I also believe that unfortunately, this pressure must have been even greater because you're an independent female researcher. So my question is, as an outstanding and successful researcher, what do you think is important for the new generation of students, science, and researchers to support and overcome these difficulties that unfortunately are tied up to the life of a research? And for you, what is important to relieve this stress and overcome inevitable discouragements and frustration that in one way or another are part of the lab's daily life?
No, thank you. You are really great. It's really, you introduce the subjects very, very nicely, all of you. And it's, I think it's very interesting because these are topics that often are not tackled, and I think it's very important to tackle them. It's interesting because now I'm trying to reflect on how it was for me and my generation. And actually, it's clear if I'm standing in front of you and I'm still going through a lot of frustrations at my level. And certain aspects maybe I cannot talk about because maybe it will be not understood very well, because one will not understand why I have to go through what I have to go through being even a Nobel Prize laureate. But you know, one has to be very frank and saying that it's a field where indeed you have you know, a lot of let's say, even at my level, you know, so you have at your level the problem of dealing with a number of you dealing with maybe anxiety, depression, etc. And then the system selects some kind of personalities that then after evolved as a kind of maybe egomaniac and sharks. And then in this world, you have also to survive. But it's a point. Having said this, I think during my time, it was maybe less than now because the world was different. I mean, let's face it. I mean, the world, not the world, but the way, you know, us, I mean, me, I was starting my PhD. The World Wide Web was not existing. It was at the beginning of, you know, I started my PhD, my master in 91, 92, or starting my PhD in 92. Was, you know, if I wanted to read an article, I needed to go to the library and, you know, go to the computer, find the articles, and then, you know, go to the big book and go to bring the heavy book to the photocopy machine. And so for sure, I was making sure that I would read the article because it was taking me 15 minutes to just get this article and some physical efforts. And for sure, there were no emails, and yet, you know, you could do excellent science. Now, your generation, you're overwhelmed by emails, by PDFs, by information, and the fact that the science goes very fast. An experiment was taking a long time. When I was a PhD student, now you have kits, you have, you know, you outsource the sequencing of genomes. So the results are coming extremely fast. So you have data, you have, and I think the technologies have evolved extremely fast. And the handling of, and everyone is a bit overwhelmed by handling all those tools, whether it's communication and, you know, working tools. And this for sure affect, you know, affect a human being in a way. And for sure, it's quite some pressure on your side because you have to deal with everything. Plus, you're way more, let's face it, you're way more disturbed by social media and by everything. Me, when I was a PhD student, there was maybe the phone that will ring with a friend calling me and telling me, can we go for a coffee, for example, or for whatever reason people will call, or ordering something that will be by phone, but that's it. I could not be disturbed by a screen, by, Instagram, by everything. And even for us leaders, I mean, we are disturbed by a lot of, of things coming up to us. And I think I totally agree that at some point we cannot, teachers and the systems of universities and cannot, close their eyes, and they have to take this, this fact into consideration and maybe think of adapting, the studies and also what is asked to have the title of at least of a doctor. It's maybe less of a problem for a master's student. And what I'm saying is very important, because the success everywhere, everything you will be doing, it's really working together, but really working together. And I have the problem that we have in a hyper, a hyper communicative world in a way. But when it is to organize, for example, an event, right now we are organizing a retreat, and we are doing it with 2 labs. We are 10 minutes apart by foot. And the people are going to do it by email. Well, actually, there is the opportunity to go to the other institute, walk and speak in front of an audience, or organizing hybrid meetings to provide updates with regard to the organization. And so this is also something that most likely I see, maybe we are all overwhelmed by those tools. And this affects also the stress. We don't take the time to really think carefully of meeting again. I believe that the stress and the depression, I mean, I cannot say that I was really depressed, but I had these moments down where I was really wondering, what am I going to do? I think it's also, working together, being with people around you. It's super important. I mean, my students survive, obviously, also because, they find in their environment some good colleagues who will support them. They support one another. And this is very important.
Joanna Martinez.
Hi, my name is Johanna. I'm from Paraguay. I'm an undergraduate student. I'm a mechatronics engineering student. Okay, my question is the following. The Nobel Prizes have awarded more than 600 laureates over the years, and only less than 30 are from Latin America. Why do you believe, Emmanuelle, this is due to? Maybe this lack of networking, or inequality in science development, or responsibilities with the family, some point mentioned before?
No, I think it's maybe what you said, inequality of scientific development. It's just that other countries, like specifically the US, are extremely strong, having developed some scientific environments that are extremely difficult to compete with. Because it's not a question of individuals, it's also a scientific environment with, how do you say, a mindset and the structures around that allow to recruit maybe, the best scientists, and that offer them the possibility to also work with top students and postdocs. So it's scientific development which is also associated to mobility, in the sense that the US, for example, they are excellent in being able to recruit from all over the world, and they attract people from all over the world who want to go to these big labs. And if you look at who receives the Nobel Prize, in general, these are always these top institutions. So I think it's an inequality of scientific development due to systems, very successful systems that have been in place for a long time and that remain successful and drive what also will be the success of the future of science, unfortunately. Or fortunately. Fortunately, in a way, unfortunately, for sure, all of us, and even Europe. I think we are always, if you look at the Nobel Prize laureates, most of them they are not Americans, actually, most of them, but they a lot work in the US.
Emmanuelle, can I just follow up that question with asking how you think we should think about that for the future then? Do we just accept it, or?
No, I think we should not accept it. I think it's about, again, it's about investors, I will say. We always talk about investors, people investing money in biotechs and industry, at least in my field. But I think that there is an urge in investing in building the next generation of scientists and innovators. And, this, it's maybe a long way, but I mean, it will be good to think that this may not and should not happen only in the American, the US or Canada and the European continents, or even the Asian continents. It should also occur in African and Latin America. And I think, it's important to have this understanding, because those countries are also facing huge challenges, whether it is with regard to, infectious diseases or agriculture and so on and so forth. So I think it's, but again, it's complicated. I think the issue as well is that a lot of, the politics are bound to, showing success within a 5-year time, and this is impossible. So I think there is a need in having a vision that is a vision of half a century in a way, because it may take 40, 50 years to see a development of a macro environment that is sustainable. Maybe not 50 years to see it happening, but to see that it's sustainable and that it grows even further.
Thank you.
And time passes fast. We saw with COVID 2 years, and it's not like every one of us has really seen around major changes in anything with a dramatic situation.
Daniela Cisneros.
Hey, hi, Emmanuelle. My name is Daniela Cisneros. I'm from Ecuador. I'm an undergraduate student in analytical chemistry. And, well, I want to ask you, picking out everything that you have said, being a Nobel Prize is making a huge impact in society and is changing already the world with your research. What do you think is your responsibility as a scientist and a female role model for the young scientists as I am, and also for the Latin American young scientists who are afraid to enter in the science war? So, thank you.
Yes, I think my role as much as the system in which I am will provide me the time it takes to advocate science is most likely to try to advocate science, actually explain what science is about. I mean, not provide this kind of image that maybe you have seen at first, because for sure when one receives prizes, you have the personage receiving a prize, but behind the personage receiving a prize, you just have a scientist having gone through, in my case, I think many challenges, some of which I'm still facing newly and unexpectedly. So my message is to really explain what it is a scientist and be frank enough to explain what it takes to encourage young female scientists to pursue the path of science, and even young women to start science, not because of science for science. It's actually because I think that science, studying science, it's also a very good way to, at the point, to acquire a certain type of methodology and thinking that can be useful for the future, and also because a lot of, hopefully what we will see is the politicians taking very seriously the challenges of the future that will bring to understanding that one has to really put a lot of effort into science, technology, environment, and the global challenges of climate change, and that this will require, a huge manpower of people who understand science. even though they will not be scientists per se, because a lot of activities in the future will be around understanding the science. And so this is important. My role is also to convey that if you are not the actors of the issues that we are facing, thinking for the future, who are going to be the actors? I mean, there are lots of issues. I was even reading. I mean, obviously now people are there are even more and more people dying of hunger. So it's really a lot of challenges for you. And I think it's the understanding that you need to, the future is in your own hands. People like me in 10, 15 years, we will retire and or maybe not for me, but a lot. And 10, 15 years, it goes very fast, and it's you are making the future.
Thank you. Auda.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Auda Nicte. I'm an undergrad student in biotechnology, molecular biotechnology. And my question was if, I've read a lot about how learning things about fields outside of your specialty helps you learn better or build different paths in your mind to discover or create a methodology. So I was wondering if you have any interest outside of your field in molecular biology, and if you have found that it has helped you in some way to be a better scientist.
Yes, so thank you very much for the question. So initially, I was trained at the university as a biochemist and macrobiologist. I did my PhD on understanding antibiotic resistance in bacteria causing diseases in humans. And, it's about infectious diseases. You see it now. I mean, it's the same thing if you work with viruses. I mean, the chance I had, it was just to be interested in these macroorganisms. And so therefore, if you work with a macroorganism, you understand that it's all about understanding the same type of machineries, of molecular and cellular machinery than any organism has. So this also brought me to an interest in understanding how those mechanisms work in other types of cells. And it's all about interactions with the environment. So if you work with pathogens, you are confronted to also understanding the host. So in my case, also the human host. So this led me to other interests, and also to the fact that for sure infectious diseases kill a lot of people. Obviously it's the second cause of death worldwide. So in any case, there is a need to develop new strategies, new therapeutic strategies. So this led me to also the understanding of how to develop research that would be fundamental, but will open doors to maybe new ways to treat patients and other types of technologies that also bacteria have evolved. So this was also, I was maybe lucky enough to work in this environment where I needed to understand a lot of different aspects in fundamental science, and also this raised also my curiosity of how it works in biotechs and industries when it comes to develop new therapeutics. And I was exposed to it very early on during my PhD, and also exposed to the clinical research, and also the research done at the hospital with for sure patients coming and being treated at the hospitals, and and the viral, or now you understand it, viral strains or bacterial strains being isolated from the patients and being studied. So this was a chance of my of the initial choice of working in macrobiology, infectious disease. So this opened me to a lot of aspects around science and in science, and this helped me a lot anticipating, at least when I in my lab when we started to work on CRISPR, I could see a lot of potential because I was exposed early on to asking myself a lot of questions beyond my own little project. And I think it's important. That's why the environments are critical, because you can be in an isolated lab and you can be in a lab in an environment whereby you will really understand all this dynamic of academic research, biotech industry, hospitals, etc. So, and I think it's important to, let yourself in a way, go to, other topics than what you are studying, even though the time is always limited.
Thank you. Alda, does that answer your question? Do you have anything you want to add?
No, that's fine. Thank you.
There is one thing I would like to say, to never make the mistake to, let's say, thinking that what you do for what you choose as a topic for your master or for your PhD will define that you will be always working on this topic all your life. That is a great thing of science, and I think a lot of heads of labs as well now have understood that sometimes it's good even to hire young scientists who are not experts in the field of research of the laboratory, because they bring something else and they have another view, another angle, another perspective.
Thank you. Julia Fortaleza.
I'm Julia. I'm from Brazil, and I'm undergraduate in speech therapy. And my question is, what is your advice for researchers who do not have many opportunities? Because speaking of Brazil, our actual government is not so supportive, in science. So sometimes it's very difficult to be a student and to be a researcher here in Brazil. So I would like to know what's your advice. Thank you.
It's interesting what you said, because now it's 25 years ago when I defended my PhD, and I needed to think of what next. For sure, you cannot compare the support that France receives for research compared to Brazil. But yeah, it was already, at the time where people were thinking that the systems would be different and that being mobile would be extremely important. So I decided to go to the US for my postdoctoral time. And this, it's something that I will encourage you, not specifically to go to the US, but being mobile. And you will most likely tell me, yeah, but it's unfair because, why maybe you don't want specifically to have an experience abroad, which is totally fair, or you have a family setting that does not allow you to be mobile, and you still wish and you still wonder what you could do to, in your own environment when the possibilities are so scarce. And I think it's a little bit, it's interesting. So maybe, it's complicated, because I understand, your point, and I don't have really an answer to it, because I will be in your situation. I would most likely wonder then, what do I do? And there is also, because we are all bound to systems, let's face it. I mean, even if you were thinking, okay, fine, so I cannot be a scientist, but maybe I can do something for science. I can teach, I can, try to move things, or I can maybe, start a new movement. We are still bound to, as long as public structure do not have the enough understanding that this is key for the development of the societies to support education and science. As long as this is not understood, then it's difficult for individuals to think that they can make the difference, even by starting some movements or some I don't know, demonstrations. And that's why I think it's important to maybe use the potential that you have to communicate all over the world, to also stand as a new generation, stand and shake the societies. I think maybe the structures, they need to see you complaining positively, but you know, actively.
David Medina.
Hey, nice to meet you. I'm David. I'm a Chilean PhD student. Recently finished my PhD. My question is, I have two questions really. So one is, what is the best strategy to start collaborative projects and increase the collaborative network? And also, what is the best strategy in, search postdoc position or to applicate to postdoc fellowship at the moment?
So the best strategy is once again understanding that we are, as a scientist, we are an individual on which a lot of pressure is put to, you know, to, in a way, I don't like this word, but in a way, succeed. This is, you know, I always say, you know, to have the luxury to continue in this field one has to, at some point, you know, go up the ladder. Because in academia, this is the only way to stay in science, is to, you know, to go up the ladder, assistant, associate, full professor. So it takes, in a way, to a certain extent, some, you know, failure, but also it has to be with success at some point. And I think this comes again with, you know, the right environment and understanding that as an individual, one has to look at what is offered around and take the opportunity of always self-reflecting on what is, you know, what do you want to achieve and what do you need to achieve what you want to achieve. And in principle, it always comes to, you know, participating in the social and let's say collegial life of an institute, not be isolated. And then if it comes to then after a project, a specific project, is, you know, learning to take the time to ask the questions. And when one asks the questions, have a methodological strategy to go on with the project, knowing that sometimes one path will not be the right way and one will have to go to plan B and plan C. And at every steps, self-reflecting to say, okay, can I do it alone with my people? Or can we do it alone as a team? Or wouldn't it be more efficient to you know, to interact with a scientist who's an expert in a specific technology that is necessary to answer a question, or that is an you know, in expert in whatever aspect that you know, is to answer the question. And I think this drives a little bit the need for collaborations, plus the networking and going to collaboration, to conferences that is not specifically as necessary in a way, but it's good to interact with people.
Emmanuelle, very briefly, do you have any rules for picking collaborators? How do you spot somebody you should be collaborating with and somebody you should?
So I think, you know, sometimes one makes mistakes, you know, because you sometimes there are the let's say your colleagues in your own environment whom you know for a while, and all of a sudden you realize, oh, you know, oh, we have this, and oh, we will need this. Oh, but, you know, X and Y, whom we know very well, could help us with this. So then it's good because we know that, you know, it will work well. Sometimes it's just, you know, I would say, you know, these are just circumstances. We need someone, and we will meet, you know, at an event, you know, someone whom we think, you know, could be the person who would help, and the person is in front of us. So we are like, okay, fine, why not asking the person? And sometimes it's also through knowing, you know, reading and being aware of the field, and, you know, people who would also, you know, maybe, you know, approaching scientists and say, okay, I need to do this. Would you know some people who could help? And then some people help you finding the person, or you read articles and you realize that clearly this person could help and you reach out to the person directly. So it's a lot of proactivity, I would say. And one has to be proactive. People are not going to come to you, you know, systematically. So because people don't know often what we are doing in the labs in any case. So it's proactivity and always, yeah, this is a strategy behind as
Thank
well.
you. Thank you. Alejandra Lopez.
Hello, my name is Alejandra Lopez. I'm from Mexico. I'm a PhD student on chemical science. My question is, do you think the scientific community has changed since you were a PhD student to leading your own group in terms of the level of support of science and in terms of diversity among scientists? And if you think that there are still things that needs to be changed in the future for science and scientists?
Yeah, so these are again excellent questions. So for sure, there has been a development in the diversity of scientists. The mobility has increased. The labs became more and more international. There have been a lot of developments of tools to really promote the mobility with regard to exchange of students or exchange of scientists. However, I have to say that with all the efforts of, you know, foundations, also the public sector, private sectors to put, you know, together programs that promote this mobility and also to promote, and this is part of the educational system, the understanding that, you know, it's good to be mobile and it's part of the scientific life. In another way, I will say that it did not change so much. If I refer to, for example, me being a European, having worked in different countries and having always been confronted to a lot of bureaucracy at the national level, whereby the mobility is actually not, it's simplified by, you know, the foundations and the programs who promote this mobility, but effectively when you arrive in a country, you're confronted to the bureaucratic system, or even though a lot of efforts have been done for students to you know, simplify their search for housing, it's not specifically occurring at the postdoctoral level or even at the leader level. And one finds herself or himself quite a foreigner in this setting. And I'm not sure whether here the support is the best. So I think there's still a lot of efforts to be done, I have to say, in this regard. But for sure, there have been some efforts with regard to diversity, I would say, more, you know, also programs that help women to you know, to develop.
Again, briefly, Emmanuelle, can I just ask you, does the state of diversity in science worry you greatly at the moment?
Yes, because you know, all of you ask yourself, I mean, you know that in your country, you may have, you know, a couple of institutes that provide the infrastructure, which, you know, you will find in a lot of other countries, like European countries, maybe Asia now, and the US and Canada. And for sure, there is, how do you say, that there is still an inequality of science development. And also, and it's not always easy to tell everyone, yes, I mean, you know, try to be mobile, because, you know, it's not easy neither to, you know, one can be confronted to apply to a lot of labs and have negative answers as well. I think there is also the diversity in terms of, you know, gender. What you're concerned with and what you have expressed today is, you know, the concern on not being able to cope with what it takes and what it is, you know, asked to be a scientist with a family life or a reasonable personal life, where you would like nevertheless to enjoy life a little bit like other people, you know, who are not crazy scientists do. And and this brings also the fact that my concern is that we may lose some brains, and also we will not help raise the percentage of female leaders in science. Having said this, I think the problem that you mentioned, it's not only girls who mention this, it's also boys. So the problem of family, of work-life balance, it's a female problem now, but also a male problem, because now I think men are also, which is good in a way, see their roles are being more involved in the development of families and education of the kids, and are also concerned and may not want to be the men working day and night and not seeing their family and not being able to share some time. So this is a shift of society and a change of generation, which I think one has to consider, and it's not that easy, because we see this develop very, very fast.
Thank you. Jorge.
Hello. My name is Jorge Andrés Castaño. I am from Colombia. I am a chemist from Universidad del Valle in Cali. I have a question to Professor Dr. Emmanuelle Charpentier. Why does diversity matter in science?
Why diversity matters in science? Because it's, it comes to every, I think, every field where innovation or creativity is requested, and even if you refer to the art area, the artists or culture, it's all about diversity. I think if you look in the old time, I mean, the stars were maybe not soccer players, but maybe they were, and even soccer players, look, soccer players, it's all about diversity. it's all about this. Otherwise, the French teams in nowadays, or the German teams would not be winning, let's face it. So it's all about diversity. But in the old time, it was the same. I mean, the stars were the intellectuals, were the artists, and these were those people who were traveling around and who had the chance to travel. So I think the diversity is really closely associated to everything that brings the development of the humankind. We all know that to challenge oneself and to challenge oneself also as a group of individuals, this is through really interactions and confrontations to something new culture, new, how do you say, new environments. This is about it. And that's why the diversity is very important. I mean, and that's why the labs have evolved to try to get more and more international, because this is what brings, the how do you say, the novelty, and also different ways of thinking. It's about, how do you say, the diversity will bring better chances for success, and it's all about diversity of people, of cultures. This is because it's all about a team, and a team will be successful if you have confrontations of different environments and cultures. So this is essential at this level. And the fact that I think the people staying always at the same place may at some point lose a kind of, let's say, not specifically interest, but another view. You always need to have people bringing new views, new questions, new angles. So that's why it's extremely critical. It's part of the success.
Thank you very much, Emmanuelle. And again, thank you everybody for your questions and comments. It's fascinating to listen to you, because of course the questions that are asked by you just reflect the universality of science, that everybody's asking the same questions no matter where they are, no matter under what circumstances they're trying to do science. It's truly one thing around the world. Tatiana Bonini, if I pronounce that right.
Yeah, that's right. Hello, Emmanuelle. It's such a pleasure to be here. I'm an undergraduate student in English language and literature at the Federal University of Jatai in Brazil. My question is, in the beginning of the dialogue, you said about there's a lot of information and science out there nowadays, and that got me thinking, like, since we are in a globalized world full of information, whether true or false, what is the threshold, the division from actually that separates science from misleading information? Like, what is the line that divides science from fiction? You know?
Yes, I see what you mean, and for sure you have a lot of, as we know it, fake news or wrong information, or let's say, I would say, distorted messages with regard to science. Yeah, I think that's why, once again, it is critical to increase already at the level of schools for young scholars. Let's say, not only introducing even early on the facts of science as topics in schools for the very young scholars, but also working with the young students at school but this is not applying only for science, it's for everything. Know how to learn how to really navigate through the overflow of information that we are all facing. So I'm not sure whether this, because I have no knowledge about it, so I have no idea whether it's implemented in schools, or so trying to accompany the young people to also spend some time, let's say, surfing on the internet with them, and maybe providing them a kind of methodology how to find their ways, and what to take as a good information and what to take as a wrong information, because even though for those who will not study further than maybe whatever grade that brings you to school until 14, 15 years old, at least they would have had a kind of education that would allow them to learn how to deal the information, the overflow of data, and how to educate oneself. I think the issue is that in nowadays one has to, one is as a possibility, or is pushed to somehow, self-education, because you may be wrongly informed if you focus only on one specific media, and it's also about this. And I think it's quite complex, but I believe that this has to be introduced into the educational system very early on, because obviously this will increase even more and more. At least it's not going to decrease. So
thank you for the question, Tatiana. Camila Almeida, also from Brazil.
Hi everyone, so my name is Camila. I'm a second year student at the State University of Southwest Bahia in Brazil. Currently doing a PhD in food science. So Emmanuelle, how do you said before, to develop your research, you had partnerships and collaborations, work with people from different countries. In your experience, what is the most effective way to build that bridges of cooperation, in specific with policymakers? Because right now in Brazil, we have been the investments in science and education have decreasing every year, and sometimes it's not about money, it's about how this money have been used. So how to bring them to work close with us for something so important, how develop science and technology for your own country. Thank you.
I know it's very challenging question once again. I think in a way, for example, if you look at Europe, you have policymakers who have invested a lot of efforts in somehow promoting, funding around cooperation. Sometimes maybe a little bit too much, because then as a single scientist leading a lab, the only way to survive maybe financially for some of my colleagues is to engage in a lot of networkings and collaborations, and this also it takes a lot of time, and sometimes it's a little bit forced, forced participation in a networking that, okay, fine, it may be helpful, but at the end of the day, people need the time to do the job with their students and postdocs. So I think I feel really sorry that surely to hear that first of all, the funds for the development of science and education are decreasing, are not here, are far away from what they should be. And then on the top of it, that there are no sufficient efforts to bring, the right platforms to also, let's say, encourage and have the scientists and the young scientists interact, and that they are a bit, left alone and having to do it on their own with, with miserable, let's say, settings. I think again it comes to the fact to which extent we are all, let's say, how do you say, dependent on the systems. And again, the fact that if not sufficient efforts are done in certain countries, it's even, I would say, even more maybe discouraging, because for sure these are also linked to political decisions, why certain people are are ended to be elected. And this is also comes to the basic education of a population very early on, and quite, I think, maybe, massively educated to understand, maybe from the age of 6 years old to 14 years old, to which extent education, science, technologies, culture, and art is important. Because even those who would not have access to continuing, their studies will be maybe the next group of massive voters who should elect also politicians according to those criteria. But if they had no possibility within their education plus in their environment to reflect on this, to even ask themselves the question about this, then happen, and it's a little bit a snowball effect then.
Can I ask, Camilla, do you have feelings yourself about what needs to be done to improve the link between scientists and policymakers in your own country or in the region generally?
I don't know, sometimes I think the dialogue between the two groups is not working. And I'm trying to figure out a way to bring everybody together, because if you doesn't develop technology or science in your country, you're gonna have to buy that from other countries. So that's gonna be even more expensive than you do that in your country. So sometimes I'm trying to see what I could do as a student, how to help my professors to do that too. And I saw all my professors working so hardly to everybody have a good education here, even when they doesn't have conditions, using their own money sometimes. And it's difficult to realize how that cannot bring interesting to some policymakers for something so important. So it's a very hard situation, and I was wondering if with the experience Emmanuelle already had to work with so different people from so different countries, maybe we could find a way to bring the conversation. But I think be here today, it's a wonderful way to bring that question and start to thinking about solutions for that, for sure.
Enrique Casado.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. It's a great honor to me be here. My name is Enrique Casado. I am PhD student from University of Camagüey in Cuba. Science sometimes is very complicated and difficult to understand. In my opinion, science needs to establish a dialogue or a conversation with people in order to they can understand the impact of our science and actively participate in the decision we make about it and its application also. Professor, my question is, how can to bring science closer to people? Thank you for this opportunity.
Yeah, how can we bring science closer to people? At least the pandemic that we are experiencing right now has allowed to bring, maybe to a certain extent, science closer to people. Maybe the message has not been conveyed. I think the message has been conveyed, but not maybe understood enough that how lucky are we to have had not only one, but multiple vaccines developed so fast. And that this is just thanks to all the development of science over the years. The vaccine was not developed like this, from scratch within 1 year. It's based on technologies which have been around for several years. And the understanding, at least with the RNA-based vaccines, that is one of the vaccines that have been successfully developed. It was a new type of vaccines that has been, very fast, let's say, implemented because of the challenge of the pandemic, but based on different technologies that were existing before. So it was combining the technology and trying to make it work. This is obviously there is an issue because otherwise if the people were even for only this specific case that affects everyone, affects every single individual, and obviously there are some issues, because if the science was conveyed properly, the people will understand that there is no risk in being vaccinated. Obviously, we all receive vaccines when we are kids, and we all receive vaccines on a regular basis against certain diseases. No one of us were, at all concerned by the vaccines that we had received before. So there are also false fears and false issues that are conveyed. It is difficult to control, specifically with the pandemic, where maybe you have, some fears that are, associated to, sociological matters, when there is, an overall population dramatically affected as we have experienced. I think, again, it's about, it's a combination between scientists who certainly, unfortunately, don't have the time to communicate and maybe should take more the time, or the systems should, acknowledge the fact that if some scientists take the time to communicate, then they should, it should be understood that then they may, take have less time for their research, and it will be good. The fact that, yeah, the media have also their, you know, their role, the politicians have their roles. So for sure, a typical scientist will say that a politician does not understand, you know, much about even the basics of science. We have seen this maybe with COVID, the media neither. So I think, again, we can tackle the issues short term, right? But in the long run, I think it's all about communicating properly and massively every year, I think, to young students, you know, whereby it's part of, you know, of having learned how to count, having learned how to read. I think we have also realized it's beyond this. I mean, the school does not teach to be, you know, to be collegial, to be part of, to be an active citizen, a participating citizen. Let's face it. I think we were all extremely passive in what has happened for COVID-19. We were even not asking, you know, ourselves the questions whether we could, you know, help more around, whether, you know, a neighbor was affected. So I think it comes also around this. I think we are all, you know, extremely focused on our phones ourselves, and we, you know, the word is, again, it's a mixture of so many things now that are possible, and nothing is happening. You know, people can meet now, they can do things together, they can change the world fast, but for whatever reasons, the systems are too slow, and the people themselves are completely inhibited. And I think that is, and they are brainwashed with, I think, stupidities. And I think this is, you know, that is a huge issue. And again, it's about science, and I mean, it's about education first.
Thank you. Holly True.
Hi, my name is Holly True, and I recently completed my PhD in marine ecology at the University of Barbados, or the University of West Indies in Barbados. So I also wanted to ask a bit about the link between science and government, but I more wanted to ask about the role of scientists in presenting scientific results to then form the basis for policy development going forward. And in ecology, and especially in the marine environment, this is a big topic. And my experience with this is that even when science is funded, which may not happen, then the results can just be filed away and not really used for anything. And also that dealing with governments can be quite a difficult process that takes a long time. And a lot of scientists prefer to spend this time actually conducting research. So the balance between having this research then applied can be difficult to find. So I wanted to ask if you've been involved in this process of presenting results to direct policy decisions, and how receptive have you found, you know, these results? And also, you know, going forward, do you think that there's ways that, you know, that they can be presented or, you know, conducted that would make them easier to apply in these kind of positions?
So yeah, it's very interesting. Again, once again, very, very interesting. So I have not been in this position myself because, you know, I'm really a fundamental scientist. You know, how should I say? Doing science that is maybe difficult to convey. I have been involved for sure with regard to the CRISPR discovery. I have been invited, for example, in Germany, in this kind of think tank groups that are existing at the parliament to explain, you know, nevertheless, where the technology comes from. Also in Sweden, I have been exposed to this, and also with regard to, you know, let's say, conveying to the politicians the importance of basic science, the importance in understanding that, you know, there should be better structures that maybe should not come from public funds, by the way, that will connect the science and the application of the sciences, and then all the ethical issues and the regulations behind, a science that would have had the chance to be applied. But I think what you refer to policymakers, it's very much either, the developers, let's say, developing more at the later stages products that are maybe more the scientists being in this setting, or everything related to epidemiology or facts with regard to, what is happening in the environment. But for the environmental issues, but it comes to indeed what you said, the data. A lot of data are produced. We have seen this also with COVID, a lot of statistics, a lot of data. Often the data are lost. Also interesting speaking, and this happens to a lot of fields, even in my field, in the field of, of computer sciences. You have a PhD student who's going to develop, for example, a software, and it's going to be a great software, but, the PhD student leaves, and then this software is, is left, in a lab and not maybe picked up forward. Or a lot of data are analyzed or produced, whether, for example, it's at the epidemiological level, and maybe not enough, not shared properly, not made publicly available sufficiently. So you have a lot of data produced, and they are a little bit, end up being in the garbage or not so much exploited, and also not being understood by policymakers, because they are not also followed up, and there is no strategy for what will happen with those data. So if I understand well what you are asking, I don't have really a solution else than yeah, we are living in a world of where we produce data. In my field, we produce data even more and more now, extremely fast, and big data. And I think everyone is a bit lost with what to do with those big data. I think there is a lot of issues as well. We have seen this also with COVID, the protection of personal data. This became a huge topic in Europe. The data protection, it's a topic in itself in the Max Planck Society where I am, but this blocks everyone in a way to let's say, it's not about not protecting the personal data, but it's about realizing as well that with implementing this data protection, it increases the fears of everyone to release data. But at the end of the day, let's face it, everyone can hack into, our cell phone, etc. Even the cell phone totally shut down and have access to our old data. And at some point, who cares about, maybe our own data when it helps, at least with regard to clinical data, for example, to allow to really use the potential of the epidemiological data to really help the development of new therapies. So you have also a difference in cultures. I think in the Nordic countries in Europe, for example, there is more openness compared to Germany or France, for example. So you have also cultural issues. So it's complex, because then you have also among all those regulations and policymakers, it's all about regulations. And it's all about regulations that are also different from one country to another one, sometimes in the same country, different from one state to another one. So it's a very complex issue, but it has to be indeed addressed for the future.
Thank you, Emmanuelle. Thank you, Holly, for the question. I'm afraid we're really out of time, so I just want to go to our last person who hasn't spoken, Juan Manuel Rey. So over to Argentina for the last comment or question.
Hello. Yes, I'm Juan Manuel Rey. I'm a PhD student in chemistry from the University of Buenos Aires in Argentina. And my question is about publishing, because so many times the success is measured in terms of how much publications do you have and in what journals they are. But do you think that some scientists may have some preconceptions about other scientists? I mean, if a publication comes from a new group or a university or a country that doesn't have much recognition in that field. And in that sense, what do you consider that can be done in order to reduce this inequality? I don't know, for example, using anonymous submission of publications or something like that. Thank you.
Yeah. So again, it's an excellent question. So I mean, you said it. I mean, let's face it. Surely, you know, the field, at least in my field in life sciences, is such that you know, we are very judgmental towards a scientist. You know, according to you know, her or his publications. The field has evolved with, you know, quantity being important over quality, maybe, and surely a bias with regard to the journal in which the studies are published, with, for sure, let's face it, some, you know, some advantages for some teams, you know, renowned teams or teams, you know, which are working in top institutions to have, you know, an access to high impact factor journals way easier than a team of researchers which is in the middle of nowhere and not known or too junior. What you mentioned is yeah, one of the ideas where this could be tackled. I believe that maybe a way or so to stop this kind of let's say publication battles that is happening is maybe to, you know, as I said, one way could be to not have any longer the first author and the last author, but alphabetical order of participating members with just a very quick, you know, how do you say, extremely brief explanation of what was a contribution of the authors. This would be most likely healthy. Another healthy aspect, as you said, is maybe anonymous submissions, actually. Even though maybe sometimes one will realize because of the style or because an introduction referring to, you know, the former work of the lab, one will realize from which lab it is, but one may not know, you know, whose collaborators, you know, are involved. And that also could be maybe a good way. And let's face it, you know, it's again about human beings. This also goes along with people who are, you know, how do you say, applying for grants or fellowships. You know, for sure, it's. I always try to be impartial when I, you know, when I review grants or papers, but not everyone is as such. And you know, if you know the, let's say you realize that the applicant, you know, has maybe had, you know, an experience in a lab of a colleague of yours or a friend of yours, so, you know, you are a little bit, you know, biased. And there are networkings, let's face it. Me, I tried to escape this. That's why I moved a lot around, and I was trying to confront myself to new environments where no one would know me particularly. And this has helped, at least me, in feeling that, you know, how do you say, I would evolve my own way independent of, you know, maybe politics. But you have a lot of politics and you have, you know, some kind of, I would not say, like to say mafia, but like it's logical, you know, everywhere you have little, you know, this kind of groups, you know, it comes from this group or from this school or from, so it is what you find in science, and it's inevitable in a way.
Unfortunately, we really do have to stop because our producers will be desperate to get on with the next session. But Emmanuelle, just 20 seconds on that, on your mobility, because you have moved lab an amazing amount. You do up sticks and go to somewhere new. And that's a very conscious decision on your part, is it? You really think it's good to reinvent yourself in new places to just keep fresh?
I think so, but then it's particular to me. There are other people who have been extremely successful staying at one place. So it's just that me, I needed this because me, let's say my how should I say, my resistance to systems or to issues that I may find is limited. So at some point, specifically if I see that the system that I join actually does not allow me to develop, and this has been repetitively, I mean, to develop to a certain extent.
But it's interesting. It's interesting your self-knowledge about what will allow you to develop and what won't allow you to develop. Very important, I guess, for us all. It's a very difficult thing to have, but it's important if you can find it. It's
Let's put it that way. At some point, what is important is that it's about self-reflecting oneself a lot and figure out, can I really develop the way I want in the system? If at some point it's not possible, then I think it's better to leave, to not, you know, be too, let's say, frustrated.
Okay, that seems a good point to stop at. I simply want to say thank you to you all for being here and for taking the trouble to come armed with such brilliant comments and questions. And of course,
me, I would like to say thank you. I think this was it was an amazing questions. And I think this was the best I ever experienced in terms of diversity of questions, and the way you were prepared. It was extremely impressive.
Very nice. Thank you very much, everybody. Okay, well, afraid we have to say goodbye, but thank you. Bye now.
Bye. And good luck to all of you. Good luck to all of you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Very much.
Thank you so much.
Glad to meet you.
Thank you.
Thank you.